Yeah. And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension and everything and the drama.
How dare! Look at this! How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Well, hello, everybody, on a calm Saturday morning/afternoon, depending on where you are. I am in the morning. Dan is in the afternoon in Calgary. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. It is the final wrap up. The Flames for taking to the media. A lot of talk. A lot will continue to talk. Wrapping up the regular season. Dan Stevenson from Fireside Chat, of course, with us. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing okay. It's as you know, it's been a bit of a week for Flames fans and Flames media and Flames social media, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know what the word is to describe the end of the season. It's it's kind of, I mean, we'll dig into this a little bit more here, but it just feels like the games, like you just saw the faces of like management, coaches, and the team after that Vegas loss. And I know that there's some people that have a different view of what happened, and we'll get into this, but you could tell that team had a pretty big punch in the stomach when they found out that Minnesota scored with 20 seconds to go against Anaheim to basically eliminate the Flames. That it was like, no matter where you are at, that's a gut punch. If you are an athlete, if you are a competitor, there's just no other way to say it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, it's a gut punch, but at the same time, I don't know how much you want to get into this now. I think the Flames put themselves in this situation. Like, they were in this situation because of their own season. So you've got to deal with that fate.
Fair enough. We will get there. But I do think it's important to acknowledge before we begin a couple of passings. And one, the celebration of life was on Thursday, but Calgary Flames Keller commentator on the weekend, Greg Millen, passed away a couple of weeks ago. It was quite a shock. It sounded like he was supposed to call the Saturday game against Vegas with Harner Ryan Singh, and they brought in John Garrett. And the game before the game in San Jose, we learned of the passing of Greg Millen. And of course, that game is a couple of weeks ago now, but it was they did the right thing in allowing them and just letting the San Jose Sharks broadcast play. I was thinking, Dan, of how much he was I listened to Greg Millen over the years. If you remember, he was part of the 2004 Stanley Cup playoff run, the Flames and Canucks. He was a commentator with Chris Cuthbert in that series. but he had a couple of stints. He called a lot more Flames games than I think people realized. He was doing the weekends with Kelly Rudy on the panel on Hockey Night in Canada, and like I think he's been a bit more on part of the Flames, and also people forget he was on the 1986 St. Louis Blues team that was played in the Campbell Conference Final against the Calgary Flames when the Calgary Flames were in the Stanley Cup. So there is a kind of a interesting connection with Greg Millen, and I believe when he started, he called some games with the late great Ed Whalen on the old 2-7 back in the day. So he's had a couple of little stints with the Calgary Flames over the years. So his voice has been a part of my hockey viewing. It was a little sad for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely sad. Definitely, anytime you lose somebody, especially somebody that young and that sudden, it's hard. And like you said, I think Greg Millen is a Flames voice that's underappreciated a lot of times. I think a lot of people don't think of him when we think about Flames voices like Ed Whalen, like even a guy like Rick Ball, who is a recent one. Peter Marr. I think Greg Millen has been that steady Flames voice for a long time, and a lot of people don't kind of forget that.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to bring up is Ray Shero also passed away, and there is a connection with Ray Shero and the Flames because he was the Pittsburgh Penguins general manager when Jerome McGinley was traded to the Penguins in 2013, and that was part of the deal that got the Flames Ben Hanowski, Kenneth Agostino, and a first-round pick, which I believe turned into Morgan Klimchuk.
I believe so.
Yeah, so there is a Flames connection there. So so that's also sad. The same age as Greg Millen, by the way, early 60s. So he's had a part of a Stanley Cup winner in Pittsburgh as well. So that was
that was Emile Poirier.
Oh, you're right.
No, it was. You're right. No, it was. They had 3 picks. Sorry, the Poirier one was a different pick. Yeah, it was Klimchuk.
The Poirier one was the Jay Bouwmeester trade, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah. So, it's that's just sad. Sad. It was a sad couple of weeks.
Looking back, what a terrible use of assets.
Oh God. Yeah. That
trade Bouwmeester and Iginla, and you get Poirier, Klimchuk, Agostino, and Hanowski.
Yeah, that was the 2000, like the asset management in the 2010s. I mean, there's Treliving, like when after 2015, when Treliving came in, it really, and when Brian Burke stepped into the Flames organization, I think he charted a little bit of a better path in terms of asset management, trade development. It hasn't been it wasn't perfect with Treliving. I think the Dougie Hamilton trade, I think, was fine because Hamilton was kind of in that window, but the Travis Hamonic trade for an unprotected first round pick is one of Treliving's mistakes. And of course, the ever search for the goaltender was also the problem too. So, yeah. And I do remember when Brian Burke fired Jerry J. Feaster. I think I don't remember who asked the question. It was like 10 years ago. And Burke asked, was it in part because of the trades that the Flames have made? And he didn't even hesitate. He said yes, like very quickly. And that the handling of the Iginla and Bouwmeester trade was, like, I think we can agree Craig Conroy handled the famous 5 better than the Jay Feaster did Iginla, Bouwmeester, and Yang.
So when I look back at those 2 moves, so Jerome Iginla got them Agostino, Hanowski, and a 2013 first. Bouwmeester got them a 2013 conditional 4th, Mark Kandari, Red O'Bara, and a 2013 or 14 first.
Yeah. I think that's why, like, when we talk about trading assets and trading veterans, I think you need to have some very realistic expectations on all of that.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's made, there's some trades. I'm looking back here at the history of trades from Feaster. There's some that aren't bad. I think every GM's had some good and some bad. I mean, I look at this one with Montreal, Rennie Bork, Patrick Holland, and a second for Camilleri, Ramo, and a fifth. Like, that's not bad. But, it's, Joe Piscola for Brian McGrattan. Like, the Flames won that one. But, I think every GM's got good and bad, but you've really got to be careful trading for futures. And I think this might come up later when we talk about what the Flames should do with some veterans, because you don't know what those futures are going to be.
Yeah. Let's start with kind of what happened here. And I do, I kind of agree with you, Dan. I mean, the Flames didn't get a lot of luck in terms of out of town scoreboard stuff. I mean, the St. Louis Blues went on a 12-game winning streak, and that was massive. The Minnesota Wild found Joel Eriksson Ek and Kirill Kaprizov, and they got hot. That's true. I think all of that is very true. But I think
anytime you have to leave your fate in other teams' hands, though, I mean, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah. And here, I mean, the death blow was the loss to Anaheim with those 2 goals in 8 seconds in the last half. But I got 3 other losses for you that I think belong on Mount Rushmore. The loss to the Oilers a couple weeks ago when they were up 2-1 and Draisaitl scores in regulation and then in overtime, that was a gut punch. The loss to Seattle when they were up 3-1 with 5 minutes to go and they lose a point. And the loss to Vancouver in March when they were up 3-1. I think they were up 3-1 and they had a 2-goal lead and they lost a point to Vancouver. Like, I think that those 3 losses, I think also are the reason the Flames are not in the playoffs. If they win one of those games, they're in.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I get what you're coming from. I think in a lot of ways this is death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, thankfully Calgary won their season series against San Jose. They've struggled against Chicago in the past. The Flames won the season series against Chicago, but yeah, I mean, you're right about those games, but I think 2 or 3 games was not the downfall here.
Well, I mean, in terms of, like, if you look back in games that they could have won when you're actually tied with St. Louis, there is a couple of backbreakers in there.
For sure. I think I think the one that's in recent memory is that Anaheim one, like you were saying, when they were up 3-1 and coughed up the lead.
Yeah.
But, I mean, going all the way back, the Flames have a lot of overtime and shootout losses that were probably winnable, but the team didn't play 60 minutes or stop playing. Like, I think this is death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. But here, I mean, the reality was, Dan, we've talked about this. I mean, there was no expectations for the Flames to make the playoffs. We were suspecting a fade in December. We were talking about a fade that was happening in January before 4 Nations. We weren't expecting them to make the playoffs. So the fact that they got here is impressive. Like, I don't it's kind of sucks in some ways, but like, it is impressive that this team found a way to keep themselves in the playoffs for whatever reason. And I also think, let's also be a little real here. The Vancouver Canucks had a party here, Dan, in Vancouver. They invited a bunch of teams in, and they decided to go to sleep in their bedroom, and everybody stuck around. And then they took over the house. That's, I think, in part why Calgary was hanging in there, and then Vancouver gets all those injuries. I think that impacts it. But, I mean, I don't think I would call this season a success. I know that this is a word that a lot of people are using, but I think, is it fair to use the word progress?
Let's break that down. Why would you not call it success?
Well, they didn't make the playoffs. That's
But were they supposed to make the playoffs?
No, but I don't think that I can call a team that didn't make the playoffs a successful season, even if their goal was not to make the playoffs.
So what would have been success? Just playoffs? If you're San Jose Sharks and you don't make the playoffs, does that mean you don't have a successful season?
Yeah,
I think teams like the Sharks are not trying to make the playoffs, but they're trying to get that high pick, and getting that is a success for them.
For me, the progress here for the Flames was establishing an identity. That's why I would use the progress. And I think they did establish an identity.
So if the goal was to establish an identity, you did that. Is that not the definition of success, doing the thing you set out to do?
I guess so, but it's like, I mean, I think that there was a bunch of players on this team that wanted to make the playoffs, though. They came in with the year in this year that we have something to prove. We've got a chip on our shoulder. So in that sense, I can't call it a success because I think that within that dressing room, if you ask the players, they didn't make the playoffs. You can't call that a success.
Okay.
That's why. I think that there was progress, though. I think you certainly have a goalie that you are going to hang your hat on with Dustin Wolf. I think you got a guy that is a potential 30, 40 goal scorer in Matt Coronado. I think that you have added a younger center that will play in the lineup in Morgan Frost. Hopefully he needs to get healthy, but I think Connor Zary took a significant step this year. And you got and I think that you started to sort of see a transition in leadership from Backlund to Kadri and Weaker. So that's where I see progress.
Okay.
Did you think that this season was a success?
I think that because I don't think they were going for the playoffs. I would say it was successful. The team, I think, came out after moving a bunch of guys that didn't want to be here, wanted to create a winning atmosphere. They did that. I mean, they got as far as they possibly could without making the playoffs. I think it was a success. They weren't trying to make the playoffs. If they were, they would have had a different deadline. I think Conroy's deadline approach kind of shows us what their thinking was. And I think for what they wanted to be, I think they were very successful.
Okay, fair. It was not a bad season. I think that's the fairest way to say that. I think that's, yeah. And I think looking back, they did the right thing at the trade deadline, doing absolutely nothing. I think that was the smart thing to do.
I agree.
It's 100%. I know that everybody wanted these trades, and we'll get into this. They want these trades of Kadri and Coleman and Backlund and Andersson. Kadri is a no movement. Like what the hell?
This is one thing that Fireside Chat, our account, was asking a lot of people who were putting these out there around trade deadline is, okay, so what's your pitch to Kadri to go to Buffalo? If you think you can move Kadri for Cousins, how do you convince him to go to Buffalo?
Yeah. Exactly. They put and for Kadri, he puts so much effort into, for the last couple of seasons, he's put so much effort into this community, into that team. It's very clear that he is becoming a mentor to this team. Like, you can see the impact on a guy that he's had on Martin Pospisil. I mean, Kadri and Huberdeau, when it started, didn't work, but Kadri and Huberdeau now work. He had an impact on Connor Zary. You cannot argue with me. If
you're trying to develop a team, I think Nazem Kadri is a guy you need to do that.
Yes.
Is there trade value? Sure, but I think the bigger value is keeping him here to help develop that team and to be one of the leaders.
Yep. And by the way, and that is such a valuable thing to have in your organization, a guy that's willing to do that. And he had 35 goals. I know. Do I think he's going to get 35 goals next year? I don't believe so. But I think he took this team on his back for a lot of this year, like, and especially the third period. And I think it was a telltale story about the game in Vegas when it's Kadri and Backlund that come out of that dressing room and tie the game, even though they're out of the playoffs. I think Kadri is part of the identity of this team.
I agree. And I think for where Kadri is in his career and where this team is in their rebuild, I don't think you need him to score 35 goals. Like, I don't think his value is just being measured at this point by on-ice production.
No, it's not. It's not. It is a lot like a very interesting comparable, I would say, is Brendan Gallagher in Montreal, who, you know, he's kind of in the same situation. He's an older player he's a veteran player that has been around. And I think Montreal's not in the playoffs without what Brendan Gallagher has given. And I think that you need these guys to help your younger players. Like, it's just, I think the people.
It's the same reason why I think you keep Lomberg here as long as you can. I mean, is $1 million a lot for a enforcer type? Yes, but I think he brings so much off the ice.
Yeah, I am. Can we talk about culture? Because this was this has been a big debate the last couple of weeks.
It's your show. Let's talk about whatever you want.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you are on page with me then, because I've got a rant about this. There's a lot of people are saying that who they would want to sacrifice the culture, and culture doesn't matter. I'm just going to say 2 words for all of that. Bullshit. 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 Have a look at the New York Rangers this year. What an unbelievable disaster that team was. And one of the things that they did was put Barclay Goodrow, a veteran, on waivers claimed by San Jose. And that pissed off the locker room. The way they handled Jacob Trouba didn't go over very well. And they had a year of drama all year. And they just fired Peter Laviolette. He's out, by the way. News that came down this morning.
I think culture is a big reason why the Canucks are not in the playoffs. Well,
yeah, that's the next one. You cannot sit here and listen to the Rick Talkin interview and tell me he was not exhausted. How many meetings that he had to have about the JT Miller Pedersen situation and how that impacted the entire locker room. Culture matters, absolutely matters. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win a cup, but this whole friendship thing, are you kidding me? You think that the Florida Panthers won a Stanley Cup because of their culture? You don't think that the Edmonton Oilers got as far as they did without their culture? If you're so intent on your top 10 pick and your belief that leads to championships, and you don't think that culture has anything to do with it? Are you kidding me with this?
I think culture is why the Flames have not been successful over the past, let's call it 10 years.
Yes. And again,
they've had the horses to do it a few times.
Well, the Daryl Sutter, the year after Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk left, that dressing room was an unmitigated disaster. Nobody can dispute that. Even the year that Conroy started with all of those players that they needed to trade, Lindholm, Tanev, Hanifin, all of that, Markstrom, all of that. How is that not impacting on the culture in the dressing room? Mm-hmm. You have to, in order to win a championship and in order to be successful in anything, you have to be playing for each other. It just doesn't work if you're an individual.
Yeah, I mean, Zadorov was the first guy to drop in that roster.
Yes,
that was a culture thing. I think, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes. Are there teams that have won with crappy culture? I'm sure there are. But I think if you're going to do this correctly, yeah, you need to build that culture. And I think there's so many Flames fans just want to shotgun their way to the playoffs and shotgun their way to the finals. And we've tried that and it didn't work for us. And could we do it again? Maybe. But look at and I still think Treliving was a good GM for the time. But his biggest flaw was he was always giving up the future for now, and then he had no future. And then he tried to give up the future for now the next year. And that's part of the reason the Flames don't have that number one center and don't have, some of those pieces. And so I think you can't be wanting everything. I mean, if the owner says, hey, I want to do this once more, and I'm willing to give up the next 10 years to do this, fine. There's a method to doing that, but I think right now we have to admit that's not where the Flames are or should be. Could they have made a cool pickup like a Marchand at the deadline? Sure, but I keep asking, what would it have cost, and would it have set you ahead or behind?
It would have set it behind. It really would have. And
I think we're in this culture, Kevin, of people, it worked on my Xbox, therefore Conroy should do it. Well, there's a lot of things we have to remember that, the NHL has, like no trade clauses, right? That just, what are you going to do? I mean, I was reading an article today about on Reddit about somebody who thinks that the Flames should try to trade for Luke Misa in this year's draft. And it's like, okay, but what are you going to give up to get into the top 3? And, this guy says you give up a 2025 first, 25 third, 2025 first, and Cooley. There's no way you're getting in the top 3 for that. Like, people are just unrealistic when they're fantasy booking. If you want to go do that, download Eastside Hockey Manager, download Front Office Hockey Manager, buy NHL 2K whatever year we're on and go do it there. But realize that those are games, and that's okay. They're designed to be fun, but that's not the way the real world works.
Yeah. And I think, to the other side of this, where I think I do agree with the people that say that the Flames need elite talent. I absolutely agree with that. I totally think that has to happen. And I do think that it would be nice to get a top 10 pick. I think there's going to be a lot of people very excited about what Gavin McKenna down the highway from you, Dan, in Medicine Hat might do.
But do we need to do that now?
No, that's next year, right? That's.
I think even the year after, you'd be fine.
Yeah, it depends on the guy.
This is probably a 5-year rebuild, right? You don't necessarily need that guy now.
Yeah, I think that you can be patient about this and just, I mean, the Flames have the potential still this year with Jersey's pick and their own pick. If with their lottery pick, they still have a chance to get into the top 10, depending on how the lottery goes, which means that they could end up picking this year, and Montreal has to wait till next year. Honestly, what I want, and I would imagine part of me thinks Craig Conroy would prefer this. I think they would rather these stupid conditions with Brad Treliving's tie on Tuesday and Bill Zito's tie.
If it's raining on the day of the draft, then you get an extra 11th round pick, and if it's not, then you get McDonald's food sent to your hotel room and all these weird things they put in there.
It's just, I think that he would rather give this pick up to Montreal and be done with, and just.
There's some certainty there for sure, which I think, especially when you're rebuilding, it's nice to have some of that certainty.
Yeah. Yeah. But and I mean, they still have Jersey's first round pick. It might be a little higher. But you've got 2 next year. You've got yours and you've got Vegas's, I think, but there's conditions on Vegas's now too. So that's another little bit of a headache, but we'll have to deal with. So I don't know. I think that the people that want the tank want this to go a lot faster than I think it's good. I don't think that people have I think most fans have some realistic expectations about where this team is at. And I think that you saw the standing ovation at the end of the Vegas game, that I think that there's a massive amount of this fan base understood. So
just so you know, Kevin, I looked it up. There's no longer condition on the Vegas pick.
Oh, okay, good.
So when the trade was made, the condition was if Vegas trades this pick before March 10th, 2024, or it's in the top 10, it becomes a 2026 first-round pick. The condition was met. They moved their first-round pick last year, so the Flames will get 2026 regardless.
Okay, so they got 2 picks. So they potentially have 2 picks this year. They have 2 picks next year for sure. So they're in the first round. So they're not. It's not bad. Now, this is where,
and they technically don't get their own pick this year. I believe they have New Jersey's and Florida's, but not their own. Yeah, because their own goes to Montreal.
Yeah. But does that matter?
No, not this year.
It doesn't. I just don't think it does. Yeah. So all of that is, you got 4 picks. That's, you could, in theory, even if you don't get a lottery, I wonder, I mean, maybe a future conversation, but if there's someone that they really like that is in the top 10 that they feel a fit, they may have the assets to do it. But what I think, though, is
so just to look at the whole draft, so I don't want to interrupt you, but the Flames have 2 firsts, a second, a third, no fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh this year. And next year they have 2 firsts, a second, 2 thirds, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and the seventh. So for the first time, I think really they've got a full slate of picks. Like under the Tree Living era, we never, we're always missing those first couple of rounds because we trade them for veterans. And if you're in the right spot, that's the right thing to do. But when you're rebuilding, you just need a full slate of picks, and they have that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with 1 or 2 more before draft time.
Yeah, and this is what I think where I was going here. I think Conroy has done it. When we talk Vancouver, we've talked a lot about managing up. I feel like Conroy has done a better job in terms of managing expectations with ownership than Tree Living did. I think Tree Living got a little too excited about that 2015 team and they needed to, the reality was they needed to still build. And I think Conroy looks at this 2024-25 team, and I think he's going to realize they still need to rebuild. And I don't think that they're going to be, I think for the most part, in terms of offer sheets, big trades, I don't see the Flames getting involved in any of that. I think Conroy's shown to be patient already, right? Like you look at the Markstrom deal, there was a lot of people that wanted Alexander Holst. I think Kevin Ball turned out to be a much better player, better fit for the Flames. You even look at what they did overall with the Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee traded. Like, I'm not saying that Farabee and Frost were outstanding, but long term, I think that they're going to be key players, right? Igor Sharangovich, ultimately inconsistent, but kind of in that age range that they were looking for. So, yeah, I don't think that I don't even think Conroy is going to be giving away first round picks for players necessarily. I think the Flames I think the Flames are going to be quiet in the offseason, and I think they should be quiet for the most part in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the roster, especially up front, there's really nowhere to add without making subtraction, right? I think that the forward roster will be returned pretty much intact. You might, I mean, if we look at the free agents here, and I don't know if you want to get into this now, but if you look at the free agents up front, you've got Frost as an RFA. He'll be back. Mantha's not coming back. Rooney's not coming back. Kirkland comes back. I don't think Dryden Hunt comes back. I think he'll go somewhere where, they're probably going to give him an NHL shot. He's 29. So really you're returning the same forward roster. If you're going to make an ad, you're going to have to make a removal. Now, could they do something like they did, what was it, last year with the Mangiapane trade where they just trade a guy for a pick? Yeah, I could totally see that. But it's not going to be an earth-shattering move.
No, I mean, I think that I could see margins. I could see them adding defense-wise. I do think they need to add a left
defense
shot.
Is where they could definitely add. But again, do they want to be competitive next year? And I think if you look at the defense, if you're going to add, I think a lot of those additions are going to come from within. I think Poirier needs a shot. I think you might do Brustevich, but I think you've got Soloviev, you've got Kuznetsov. Like, I think if you're just going to kind of change marginal D-man for marginal D-man, you're going to do a lot of that internally.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the defense, before we get to Rasmus, the excitement was all over. There was a lot of debate about Zayne Parekh going into the last game of the year, whether he should play or not. I heard you on Fireside Chat. I stated that I did not think that they should have played Zayne Parekh, and I think I will add a reason to why that you couldn't have done it here. First of all, there were some people that wanted the 11-7. The Flames haven't played 11-7 in 2 years. They haven't practiced 11-7 in 2 years. I don't see why you're doing this in a must-win games while you're playing Zayne Parekh in 11-7. It just doesn't work for me. You haven't done it. You're not going to. You're also, the other thing that I would say is the people wanted Zayne Parekh to play the power play, and I think the word that a lot of people used was shelter 5-on-5. I don't think that you could do that because we'll get into Rasmus Andersson here and that injury, but I don't think that would have been effective for Zayne Parech's development. If you're going to play him, you have to play him. Like, you cannot play this shelter game, especially at this point of the year where they were at. I don't think that was effective for Zayne Parekh's development. Is he more talented than Braden Bahal and Jake Bean? I don't think that. Yes, of course he is. But you're also, with Rasmus Andersson revealing that he played with a broken fibula since the Seattle game. So the last 12 games of the year, he plays with a broken fibula. How you do that, I don't know. I am not a doctor, cannot explain that.
He probably just stared down the pain.
Yeah, I think so. I think he just went. But you can't
stare down his fibula every game.
You were overplaying Rasmus Andersson already. And I know that there's going to be people that say that you can't, then why doesn't Rasmus sit out? That's just, it's a longer debate and conversation.
When you're trying to make the playoffs, you have to play the proven commodity. Yes, Zayne Parekh could have been great, but Zayne Parekh also could have not been great. And I think as a coach, you play the known commodity. And 80% or 70% Rasmus Andersson, you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And, I've said this for a long time, Kevin. When you're bringing up a guy from the farm, I think you have to bring them into the role you want them to be in. Putting Zayne Parekh in to replace, a third pairing guy is not a good look at what Zayne Parekh is. If you're going to put Zayne Parekh in the lineup, you got to put Zayne Parekh in the top four. Just like when you bring up a forward, bringing up Coronado to play on your fourth line is not a good use of Coronado because he's not used to playing such, different role and limited minutes. Like, yes, I get it. Fans want to see these guys. Yes, I get it. It's exciting. But at some point, just have some patience. You'll see him next season.
Yeah.
And I don't like this idea of play a game and burn a year.
That would have been the other thing as well. Like you had to kind of be careful with that situation too, with the contract.
I've never liked that idea. If you're trying to commit to me long term, it seems like a dick move. Say, well, play me in one and burn a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Craig Conroy will explain that whenever he speaks, but I think that's ultimately, I think what they wanted to do is get Parekh used to NHL ice. I think that it was always the plan to play him when they were eliminated, when and if they were eliminated. And that's, and you look at what they did at the LA King game. They did play everybody in the spot that they were kind of slotted. They played Parekh with Kevin Ball. They played Hunter Perscavich in a 3-4 position.
Yeah, he was with the call for most of that game, I think.
Yeah. And Morton and Sanayev, they played in a top three role, which I think is very
Kadri and Klapka.
Yeah. And Sam Morton was played on a fourth line, which I think is where he projects as well. So I push back on the Flames, like the development debate here, because I think that the Flames are doing a very intelligent job of development. It's just not going to go as fast as people think it is, right? I know that everybody wants all these kids to come in and play. This is a hard league. There are mistakes and there are growing pains. And
the American League is a developmental league. It's where guys go to develop.
Yeah.
And I say this on our show, and I've said on your show, Kevin, if you want to see these guys, great. Buy a ticket to the Wranglers. It's not like when they were in Stockton and they were out in the middle of nowhere and you couldn't see them. If you're in Calgary and you want to see Brstevich play, go buy a Wranglers ticket. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I understood it when the team was off yonder, and it's the only way fans could see them. But even if the team was far away now with the Flow Hockey subscription, I think AHL games are more accessible than they ever have been. Like, go watch the guy play over there. They don't need to be wearing the C for you to see them play.
Yeah. Also, I asked Pat Steinberg and Aaron Vickers on 960 yesterday if Parekh could play in the NCAA, and he can't. Because of it's such a silly rule, but they consider him that pro experience, so he can't play in the NCAA, which is really frustrating because I think there has to be some sort of medium here to allow a player to develop. I think Zayne Parekh will play NHL games next year, but I also think that there's a very legitimate argument that depending on how camp goes, he probably could use some AHL. I don't think that should be off the table. I know that there's so many people that are like, this guy's a franchise player. I think we should pump the brakes on this a little bit. he played.
I don't disagree. You can be a franchise player, but when I think of the qualification of franchise player, it doesn't to me necessarily mean jumping from junior to NHL.
No. There's a learning curve here. Like I think you see players like Lane Hudson and Quinn Hughes and others make it so easy. That's not always the case. And
I think Connor Bedard is a great example of that. I mean, he's a guy who I think a lot of fans thought would be more dynamic than he is. And it's not going to happen at this point, but I think there's a case to be made that maybe Bedard needs some AHL time.
Yep. And they don't see, I think that the question will be, is Connor Bedard a center going forward?
Yeah. What I would like to see, Zayne Parekh is 19. He can't go to the AHL because of it, because they have a 20-year-old limit because of they don't want to compete with the overagers in the OHL. But just like the Canadian League has exceptional status, I think maybe the AHL needs a deal like that. And that might be something you'd have to wait till the CBA, but maybe each team can denote one player who's 19 to go to their AHL team.
Yeah, something like that it has to be fixed.
Yeah, because I get that you want to send guys back to the Canadian League. I totally get that. But if each team could do it for one guy, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, like Matvei Grudin is probably a good example of this, because I don't think he should be playing. He's not ready for the NHL, but I don't think he should go back to the CHL. I think
no.
Probably, the
only other option there, as far as my research shows, is you could send both guys overseas for a year if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to weigh what's better, being on the bench in the NHL or playing full-time minutes in, say, the Swedish league or something, but it's a possible step.
Here's a question for you. I know that the Ottawa Senators had a conversation with Hockey Canada about them not playing Carter Yakimchuk from the Hitmen. Do you think the Flames will be having a conversation with Hockey Canada about Zayne Parekh and saying that you need to put him on the World Junior team next year?
I think any conversations you have with what Hockey Canada is right now are going to be moot. Next week, we start the 2015 Junior League trial for that sexual assault allegation. I have a feeling what Hockey Canada is now is not going to be what it will be July 1st. I think that whole organization is going to get blown up.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, sure, you can have a discussion, but at the same time, you don't have to do what the Flames tell you to do. I think Hockey Canada knows that they screwed up. I mean, there was some discussion after they were out that, I don't remember the exact words, but, we made some choices here, and I think they would be foolish not to do it twice in a row. But I think right now, Hockey Canada has bigger things to deal with than Zayne Parekh and next year's World Juniors.
Yeah, totally.
I would like to see, is there a age limit for the World Championships? I think it'd be interesting to see Zayne Parekh go to the World Championships this summer.
I think that Zayne Parekh was mentioning in the player reveal that he was going. I'm going to see if they,
because if you want this guy to get some experience playing with men on an NHL level, I think that's a low impact way of doing that.
Yeah, that might be something. I'm just doing a quick check on Twitter here if there's been anything here. I'm going to ask somebody here. But yeah, I was wondering if Parekh would go. We do know in terms of who's going. Matt Coronado is going. Jonathan Huberdeau is not. Dustin Wolf not known yet. Mackenzie Weegar's playing for Canada. Rasmus Andersson is playing for Sweden on this broken fibula, which interesting. Okay, but yeah.
Know what? At this point, if it's broken, you can play with it. What's another 3 weeks? He's probably thinking, and then get it fixed after that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's kind of a low impact style.
Yeah.
I think with Parekh, sorry, going back to this, Kevin, just because of where he's at and the numbers, I think he will have to be on the Flames opening day roster next year. There's no question about that. You're not sending him back to the OHL. But I think fans have to temper their expectations. I think yes, he'll probably be on the opening day roster. Is he necessarily your top 2? Probably not. And should he be? Probably not. It's a lot like Coronado. I mean, he was able to go up and down, but he was up and down all last year. Like, I think just because Parekh could be the franchise player doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen like that. I think give this guy some time.
Yeah, what Anaheim did with Leo Carlson is kind of do a load management thing. And I think that's been an idea that was discussed with Parekh. I do think the other thing that I think Flames management and coaches are going to keep an eye on, and look, this was Zayne Parekh's words. He came into the training camp last year overwhelmed. Think that they're going to have a little bit of a look and see how he comes into this training camp. I do think that's something that they're going to have a conversation to be wary about too.
Yep.
So
I would also caution Flames fans. I don't think Brzustewicz should or does make the team next year.
I like him, but I do think he needs a little bit more work in terms of some decision making. I like his size. Actually, I think that's
I like him, but I think when I look at guys on the farm right now that you need to give another look to, I mean, I think Poirier, I think Kuznetsov, I think Soloviev, I think for a bottom 6 role, those are the 3 guys I'd be looking at over Brzustewicz. I don't see any downside to putting Brzustewicz in the American League for another year.
No. Now, let's go backwards here with Jake. I think Jake Bean is back. But Jake Bean's
got another year on his deal. Nobody's going to acquire, and you're not going to buy it out.
No, I could see Jake Bean going up and down though, switching dressing rooms from Flames to Wranglers.
Why? I think you can keep him here as a 7 or 8.
Depending on where you're at with Poirier and Soloviev, I think that there might be a little bit of a battle there.
Yeah, maybe.
Joel Hanley is an interesting case. I think if the Flames made the playoffs, I think that he could have got a really interesting. I think that someone would have overpaid him in free agency.
I could see that. I'm honestly surprised that he did not move at the deadline. Like, well, I didn't expect the Flames to make an acquisition. There's always guys like that are. I mean, look at some of the guys the Flames have brought in over the years for a 3rd or 4th round pick. Like, I thought that was a guy you could have gotten an asset for.
Yeah.
I don't think he will be back here. I mean, Hanley's a UFA. I think there's other teams that would probably bring him in and give him a better spot than the Flames will, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. This feels like it's a very different situation than Oliver Shillington, but this is a guy that I think he's going to have to just read the market here.
Again, we got to remember Hanley's 33, right? So if you're rebuilding and you're putting a 33-year-old in your lineup as opposed to trying a guy like Soloviev, Poirier, or Kuznetsov, I think maybe you're not doing it right.
Fair. By other counter, though, just to play devil's advocate on this, he clearly was the best partner for Mackenzie Weegar.
Of the available options, yes.
Yeah. And I think that they probably would like to upgrade on that. I think Miramonov, I don't think Miramonov is back.
Again, I think he's 1.25. I think he'll be here because he's got another year. Whether he's in a Flames jersey or Wranglers jersey, I think he will be employed by he'll be employed. He'll be getting checks from the Calgary Flames no matter which league he's playing in.
Yeah.
Because who takes him?
Right. Murray Edwards will sign your check. It just depends.
I was going to say, but I didn't know fans would get it. Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation will be his employer no matter what jersey he's wearing.
Yeah.
And the Flames like to have a veteran on the Wranglers. I mean, they did it with Tenorti this year, right? They've done it with guys like that in the past. I think instead of going out and finding Jared Tenorti, you could just say, okay, it's going to be Miramonov.
Fair.
I think Jake Bean, honestly, will stay here as long as he wants to be here just because he's a Calgary boy, and I think it's a bit of a favor to the Bean family too. Like, unless he's a liability, I think
he wasn't a liability. I will push back on people. Did not think he was a liability. I thought that they played really well at the Pahal and Bean played pretty solidly at the end of the year.
And Bean even said in an interview that he was a little overwhelmed at the beginning of the year playing in Calgary and playing for his favorite team.
Yeah. I don't think Jake Bean is as bad as a lot of people say. I'm not saying that he is a great player, but I think he's a 5'6" defenseman in the National Hockey League on a rebuilding team.
Yeah, he's a serviceable guy for where the Flames are at.
Yeah, I didn't mind them at the end of the year to be. And again, they only lost one game, and that was that one game in Anaheim through the final stretch. So, Sea of Red Central has pointed out Zayne Parekh might be joining the Wranglers for the playoffs. So he can join the Wranglers for the playoffs. He can't play in the regular season.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think he can join them on an amateur tryout agreement.
Yes, something like that.
So yeah, he can join them. Whether he can play or not, I don't know, but I think he can probably be around the team. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he can play once his OHL eligibility is over, which it is because they're out of the playoffs. I think he can be there and he can play, but he can't play regular season next year.
Yeah, it is a very confusing rule. It is almost like this first round pick condition. What's weirder?
Yeah. What do you think Ball gets? I mean, Ball's an RFA. What do you think he gets for money?
Whew. I don't think he's getting a long-term deal. I'm feeling like it's going to be 4 by 4 or 5. Is that too much?
Remember, Conroy said he didn't want to do anything more than 2 or 3 years. Do you break that for Ball? Like, Ball, to me, has only shown he can do this since he's got here. I would say do 3 years and make him prove he can still do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be more than 3 or 4.
If Andersson's making 4 or 5, you can't pay him more than Andersson, can you?
No. Well, Andersson's not going to make 4 or 5 next year or in his next contract.
No, but for 2025-26, Andersson's making 4 or 5.
What's Ball making now?
1 million.
Could you go 3 by 3?
That's what I think would be the most reasonable. Maybe 3 and 3.5. Yeah. I think 3 by 3 works. Show us you can be that steady defenseman, and then we'll pay you.
Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility we see a pairing of Parekh and Ball at some point next year.
Nope. I think if it was me, I would want to even see. I think, you're talking about Uyghur. I think putting Uyghur and Parekh, even though they're both right shots, makes some sense too to play with the veteran.
I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm not a big fan of Mackenzie Uyghur playing the left side. I think this guy is.
What if you put Parekh on the left?
Yeah, I know he played that in the OHL, but I would like to see him on the. I would like to see him on the right side. I don't know if I'm a big fan of the Parekh Uyghur pairing yet, but I could see why people are excited about it because I think that both. I think with Uyghur, I think the issue with Uyghur and Miramanov is that Uyghur had to cover a lot of Miramanov's mistakes. And I think with Parekh, a lot of scouts talk about that there's still a little bit of an adventure of him in his defensive zone. And I feel like Uyghur will have to overcompensate. That's my concern.
Yeah, I can see that. But again, I think he may have to, or he may be told don't. Let's be honest, this team is probably going to have a worse result next year. Let the kid figure it out.
Yep. Fair. Before we move on, we talked about Bruskevich and where we're at. What about Morton and Sinayev?
I think Sinayev goes to the American League next year.
Yeah.
I don't see a spot for him in the current lineup. He's 20. I don't see the need. I mean, sure, he looked good for one game. David Moss looked good in his first game in the NHL too. It's easy to look good in your first game, especially when you're playing with a guy like Kadri. I think Sinayev, you send down to the farm. I think if we look at where this team's gonna want a guy, I don't think he's a guy. I don't think he's a top I think you have to play him top 6 minutes if you're going to keep him, and I don't think they have an opening top 6. I'd send him down. As far as Morton, I think you've got one center opening. Would you take Morton or Kirkland?
Let's depend on Kirkland's health. I think Kirkland's on the team next year no matter what. Depending on what they do, I think that they do battle for 12 and 13. I could see Morton getting NHL games next year.
I could too, but I don't think you carry him as an everyday NHLer.
No, I think that, again, this is another guy that will get a paycheck from Calgary Sports and Entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, Morton's an RFA. Nobody's going to offer sheet. I mean, he's not that good. He's getting $870 now, so you bring him in. I don't think he's 25. He's waiver eligible, but nobody's going to claim him on waivers. Like, I think he's waiver exempt this year, but I think he becomes waiver eligible next year. But, this is a guy who, I think he'll get some NHL games, but I wouldn't be rushing him into the lineup.
No, you don't have to. While we're at it, Coronado, what are you paying him?
I think, again, he's 22. This, to me, is his only good season. Like, if you're going to pay him based on last year, you don't pay him a ton. He looked good this year, but will they keep looking good? Coleman's 4.9. Backlund's 4.5. I don't think you can go any higher than 4. I'd probably try to do 3.5 by 3 and give him a bridge.
So there's some people ask, so you wouldn't do the max with Coronado right now?
Not after one good season, no.
I'm with you. I am a believer in just letting him develop and develop them and then get that earned contract as well, as opposed to entitling him. And I think Craig Conroy is going to be the same way.
Let's remember, we were calling for Coronado to be sent down at times last year. Like, he did not look good as an NHLer.
Nope, but he did improve this year.
He did, but did he improve to the fact that you can guarantee he's going to look good for 8 years?
No. I mean,
do it again, kid.
Yeah. It's 1 year.
Exactly. So why are we paying you long term off 1 year? Do it again. Give you 2 years. Give you 3 years. Figure it out. Then let's talk money.
Yeah. And then you also got Morgan Frost you have to sign. I would be open to bringing back Anthony Mantha on a PTO, but I don't think he's coming back. I feel bad for Anthony Mantha, to be honest with you. I mean, this guy came into Calgary with a 1-year prove-it deal. I believe that the idea was that they were going to trade him at the deadline to a contender.
Yeah.
And he didn't get that shot. I feel bad for him, but I think the only way he comes back to Calgary is on a PTO.
I think you could bring him in, but I think if you want that kind of veteran on a prove-it, there's other guys you could look at as well.
Yeah.
Here's a crazy idea, Kevin. Taylor Hall's a Calgarian. He's coming off an okay year. Try to bring him in on a prove-it, play for your hometown team for 1 year.
Where are you putting him?
I mean, if you look at the lineup right now, I think you could put him anywhere. I think you could put him with Kadri on line 1. I think you could also put him on line 3 with Frost and Farabee.
Okay, so I guess let's toss a couple of other. I have a list of names the big questions, but this leads to a couple of other ones. I think Igor is back. I feel like Igor was a lot like this is not the same player, but sort of some of the confidence issues that Pettersson were battling this year. I saw Igor battle as well. I think I found his stride at the end of the year. I think they need him to be a bit more consistent next year. I'll say that. I don't see him being moved.
Well, who would take him? He's 5.75. He's got a 10 team no trade, and he's signed till 2030. Who's jumping to take that deal?
Yeah.
I think he'll be back because he has to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to pay somebody to take that right now.
Yeah. Okay, Martin Pospisil.
So before I answer these, let me ask you this. Are the Flames next year contending, or are the Flames expecting to be in the bottom 10?
I think that they're going to I think they're going to stay young. I think they are taking a step back. But also at some point here, there's going to be. I do think that what they want to do is create some competition in a number of different areas.
I think Postel will be penciled in for an NHL role, but I think you could see. I think he plays a lot the same game or they wanted to play the same game as Lomberg. They tried him at center, it didn't work. I don't think he had a great season. I think we really caught fire in a bottle with him. I think, if you need to move a guy on the forward side, I think it could be him, but I'm going to pencil him in as he's there unless someone takes his spot.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trading him, you're getting a fifth or, fourth or fifth from him. He's not, I think in Calgary, we love him. Outside, he's just another guy.
Yeah. Adam Klapka, give him credit for the hard work that he did.
I think Clapper makes the team.
I think he makes the team too, but I could see him making it over Pospisil.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's that part of it. I know that Connor Zary got hurt twice this year. I think that really sucks, but I still think he's going to be a key part of the team next year.
My only issue with Zary is it's not just this year he's been hurt. He's been hurt almost every season he's played. Like, I wonder what the reliability of this guy is. I think we were lucky he didn't get hurt last year.
Well, I think that they, a lot of talk about training and what they're doing. I think he's going to adjust his training, and let's hope for the best for him. But I do think that the Flames are very high on him. I don't think he's a top 3 forward, but I do think he's a 4, 5, 6 forward.
He's an RFA this year. You'll qualify him. You'll probably qualify him at about $1.5 million for maybe 2 years. I think, again, he's a guy that you're penciling in, but I could see somebody overtake him if he's hurt.
Yeah. So I guess now let's get into the big 4 in terms of the big veterans. Let's start with Rasmus Andersson, who played with a broken fibula. A lot of people are saying that he is gone. I don't know. I am of the belief that I don't think he signed. This is my early prediction. I could be totally wrong then. I don't know if he signs an extension, and I don't think the Flames trade him. I think that this does become a discussion point during the season. And I think this is in part because they need to see where Zayne Parekh is at. I wonder if Rasmus Andersson was truly satisfied with his year, and he wants another year to prove that what type of defenseman that he can get to see if he can push that contract level up. And I do think the Flames want to keep him as the other thing as well. I think that if they would prefer, they would want to extend Rasmus Andersson. I know that there are there are fans that want to see Rasmus traded because he's 30 and they don't like the contract. I don't think the Flames see it the same way. I think that they would prefer to extend him, but I also think that both of them will want another year to prove where everybody is at. That's my initial hunch. Am I off base here?
I don't think you see him moved in the offseason. If he moves, I think it's at the deadline.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at.
I think you keep this guy as long as possible. And again, I think he could be a good leader for Parekh. I think he could be a good leader for Poirier, whoever goes into that spot. I see no reason to rush into this deal. Now, if you get a deal that blows your socks off at the draft, you take it, of course, right? But I can't see this move being made until the deadline. And I think that that's, again, a big deal that they could announce, say, in January of, okay, he's decided to come back for another year.
Yeah.
I've heard people say they don't want to sign the contract, and my question is, what are you going to do with all your money? The Flames have $20 million and the cap's going up. Like, if you don't spend it on him, what are you going to do? Like, it's not like you need the money for something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in a future podcast, I want to expand on that minus 38, because I do think that there's some context that has to be given to that. Plus minus is a flawed stat. Of course, it's different when you got one guy that is a plus 20 and another guy at minus 38. But I also think offensive zone time and a bunch of other things need to be portrayed in this before. I think Rasmus struggled. I don't think it was a great year for Rasmus, but I also don't think I don't know if it was as bad of a year as a lot of people think either.
I think it's exactly what I expected from him on a development, on a, rebuilding year. A team there was really no defense in this team.
No.
And he was on the ice against a lot of key players. That's why he's got such a high minus.
Yeah. Him and Ball were the matchup pair.
They were. And, whether they keep, I'd be sad to see him go. I don't think we get as much for him as some fans think. That $4.5 million is not going to be as valuable to teams next year as it was this year because the cap's going up. But if he wants to stick around, I'd say let him stick around. I mean, like you said, he's going to be 30. I think if another team's taking him, he's going to get a short-term deal. If he wants to go chase a win or something, great. But if he says, I love Calgary, I want to stick it out, I still think you need veterans. Sort of like we talked about with Kadri. I see him as the Kadri of the defense. And you keep him around and you help him shore things up. Even if in 3 years you're overpaying him as, let's say, 5-5 to be your third pairing guy, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too. I would keep him is my point. I just think it's going to come down to where everybody else is at. That's kind of where I'm at with that one. Kadri, we talked about. Michael Backlund.
I think the Calgary Flames retain this guy as long as he wants to be a Flame. Like, I think Backlund's in a very similar position to Jarome Iginla in that if he were to say to fans here, you know what, I want to go and chase a cup, I'm 36, I would totally understand. And I would be sad, but I'd be happy for him. I mean, that's still one regret I have is Jarome never got his cup.
Yeah,
I can totally see it. But if Backlund says, hey, I'm 36, I mean, next year's he's going to be 37. If he says, I just want to retire a Flame, let's do it.
I wouldn't, even if he goes and let's just say he ends up in Florida with Matthew Tkachuk, wouldn't surprise me if Craig Conroy finds a way to get Michael Backlund back in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, if you trade him next year at the deadline, he could go somewhere and then come back, in the summer, Olle Jokinen style. Right? Yep. They traded Jokinen and brought him back. Yeah, and even if not as a player, I think Backlund will be back here at some point, whether that's as a coach or whatever that is. I think, his family's here. I don't see him leaving anytime soon. But again, I don't know. I think when I weigh Backlund here versus the return for Backlund, I don't know that it's worth, making the big move unless he really wants it.
And that's kind of the other thing is sometimes the best thing to do is sign the player because the trade value isn't what you think you're going to get, right? You might as well just pay the guy and just move on and pay the nice man, as you say, because you're not going to get the trade value that you think.
Yeah, no, it's true. And also Backlund has a 15-team no trade list starting January 1st, 2026. I don't see him traded before that, but I mean, no doubt that trade list will have the bottom 15 teams in it. So, yeah, I mean, if he can go somewhere, like you said, at the deadline and chase a cup, great, let's let him do it. But, I think I don't know if number 11 will ever be retired here, but I think this is a great example of how the Forever Flame program can be well used.
Yes, this is a guy that it's kind of, yeah, I don't think I think people need to appreciate Michael Backlund's contributions.
On and off the ice.
Yeah, and he was a massive...
In and out of the Saddle Dome.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, fans have fallen in love with his daughter, Tilly.
Oh, yeah, she's great on social media. And now
you weren't here, Kevin. You might not have seen it, but she drew a picture of her dad a couple of years ago, and they made a T-shirt out of it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then she was all sassy at the Silver Stick game, and they're showing that on the screen of her, wanting her own stick and not letting her brother touch it, and fans have just fallen in love with that whole family.
Yeah, producer Heidi pointed that out.
And even if Backlund is your third or fourth line centerman, I'm okay with that. Again, you need vets. Let's hang on to them.
Yeah. Blake Coleman is interesting. I do think there's some value in trade. I think you could get something for him because he's a proven playoff guy. I don't think he came here to sign and miss the playoffs for 3 straight seasons. I do wonder if he is gone next year.
Coleman's a little bit different because he's got 2 years left. So he's not a free agent until 26, 27, end of that season. But yeah, if there's one of these guys I could see going, I think it's Coleman.
Yeah.
I like him. I think he's a great guy. I think, like you said, he came here after, being with a very successful Tampa Bay organization to win. Coleman is older. He's 33. He's not quite as old as Backlund. But yeah, I think if they're going to make room for somebody on the forward side, I think you could and I think you'd get a decent haul for Coleman. Do I think you get a first? No. Do I think you get a second? Probably not. Maybe.
Second, conditional second, third, depending.
I think it depends when you move him. If you move him in the deadline, I think you might get a second. If you move him in the offseason, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a deadline deal to me. I don't think it happens in the offseason.
I could see them doing it almost like the Mangiapane deal at the draft to free up a roster spot.
Yeah. Because in theory, you could use Backlund and Zary sort of in the same way that you use Backlund and Coleman. If Zary is healthy. I think that's the other question that's going to have to be answered here. How is Zary coming into training camp?
Yeah, and that's why I said, you might pencil Zary in, but he might not actually make the team, or he might be hurt and you got to have a backup.
Yeah.
I think that, honestly, both Zary and Coleman become a little more expendable with Frost and Farabee.
Frost is interesting. Both of them are interesting to me. I don't know if I see Farabee as a Coleman necessarily. I don't think they're the same player.
I don't think they're the same on a competitive team, but I think for where I think the Flames will be, I think they can fill a good enough comparison. I think it'd be okay to say, you know what, Farabee's taking that over, and hey, I got a second for my troubles. I think he's good enough on a bottom team.
I think Morgan Frost. I don't think Morgan Frost is a number one center, but I think he could. I think if you take this year and kind of put him with, not playing with Backlund, but I think if he started to do some of those Michael Backlund minutes, and I know that was kind of a new experience for him, but I generally like him. I know that he went a pretty long time without goals, but that's good grief. The Flames were 32nd in goals. He's not the only one person that didn't score enough. So I don't know if I
think as outsiders, Kevin, a lot of fans also discount what the mental fatigue is of A, your first trade, and B, going from the East to the West.
Yeah. So one guy I would love to sit down with and understand that whole process would be Jonathan Huberdeau. Because I think it was a massive kick in the teeth what happened to him. I think from his perspective, it felt like a kick in the teeth. And I would love to sit down with him and just kind of go through what he went through and just learn from that. Because that is, yeah. I think Morgan Frost and both Farabee went through that. It's not going to be that someone is going to jump into the lineup and everything is going to go, hey, okay. It's just not going to happen. Everybody has an adjustment. And I don't know if they didn't really, I don't know if they had a role for Morgan Frost here. I mean, they didn't plan for the Connor Zary injury, right? So
I think in the end, you made a deal to bring in guys and you'll find the role for them.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was a good enough deal that you say we need those talents and we'll find a spot for them.
Yeah. Dan Vladar. I think Dan Vladar stays. And I think I will stand on this. I believe that he should have stayed all along. I don't know if there's a place for him elsewhere. I think that there's some people suggesting that he could be a backup for Markstrom in New Jersey is the one place. But I don't see a place in Anaheim. I don't see a place in San Jose. Chicago has Spencer Knight. I don't see a place for him. I honestly think he's going to end up staying, and I think that is the best thing to do. Everybody had this high expectation on Devin Cooley, but I remember us having a chat about
Cooley is the reason that the Wranglers barely made it in. He looked great till Christmas. He got hurt, and he's never recovered.
Yeah.
And I think the fact the Flames signed 2 free agent goalies tells us something there as well.
Yeah. So they signed Owen Say and Arsene Sergeyev
Sergeyev's their own draft pick, but Say's a free agent. Like, to have, let's call it 4 pro goalies and the AHL, ECHL, that's a lot. Plus, the Wranglers have Connor Murphy. That gives you 5 goalies there. I think you're going to see some movement because of it.
Yeah.
Whether that's Cooley, whether that's Ignatiev, like 5 pro goalies, I don't know where you put them outside of the NHL.
Yeah. Well, there's the
I mean, even if you put 2 of them with Rapid City, right? You've still got, like, if you got 5 guys you're trying to find a home for.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Vladar ends up back here. I think it'd be foolish for him to sign before July 1st. If I was his agent, I'd say, let's see what else is available. Let's just go take a look. Because, like you said, other teams have somebody, but maybe somebody comes and offers him starter minutes, and I think you'd be foolish not to take it. I think I'd be telling Conroy, hey, we love what you guys are doing. Our guy was the heir apparent to Markstrom. Then you brought in the kid. We think that he can be a starter, and you did at 1.2. So let's go out and see if somebody else agrees. If not, we'll come back.
One team I could see doing this is if Winnipeg gets eliminated in the first round. I think there's going to be a ton of conversation about how much Connor Hellebuck plays. And Dan Vladar played, 35 games? I think that would be a guy that I think Winnipeg would have a good look at, say, and reduces Hellebuck's minutes.
I think Edmonton should take a good look at Vladar.
Don't give them advice. They don't need
as much as I don't want it as a Flames fan, if I'm looking at teams that need a goalie, I think Edmonton makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think Edmonton is in a very interesting position. They're a very interesting team going into next offseason. Connor McDavid is a free agent in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is I don't want to be hot takey about this, but I am hearing that there are some people that are speculating that McDavid signing in Edmonton is not the foregone conclusion that other people think it is.
If he doesn't win, I don't know why he would.
Yeah. I
mean, let's be honest. He's not, a kid anymore. I mean, he's getting up there in age too. He's 28. He's the same age as Rasmus Andersson. So people think Raz should go because he's old. McDavid's best days are behind him, and we're starting to see him get hurt. Like, who knows how many full seasons he's got left.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I think is just interesting is what Colorado around McKinnon and Makar made massive changes this year to goaltending, defense, center.
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's a more interesting story than people in Edmonton will want to let on.
I agree.
So
going back to goaltending here, but sure, let's talk about McDavid. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, and I think if you don't win, why would he want to come back?
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess that's where you're at with Vladar being an up. I think Vladar is an upgrade to Pickard. Is he an upgrade to Skinner? I'm not entirely.
I don't know if he's an upgrade to Skinner, but Vladar has shown us that he can do tandem minutes. And I don't know, Skinner's a guy you want playing 50 games. I think if you were to have a Skinner-Vladar tandem, you could do okay.
Yeah.
I think Detroit would be fine to walk away from one of their goalies. I mean, they have 2 guys in their 30s with Mrazek and Lyon. I think there's some spots that Vladar could fall. I don't know if Seattle's all that sold on Joey Decord.
That's fair too.
I think if I was Connor, I think I would give him the respect of letting him see what's out there. I think you respect this guy enough to say, here's our offer. If you want it, let us know. If you find better, great, take it.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, but I do think I think he ends up back here.
I don't know who's in the system for Minnesota, but with Flower gone, there's a need for another NHL goalie there. I think there's enough teams that might just be looking for somebody else. That I think I would be surprised if we see Vladar back. Let's put it that way. I think there's somebody else that would even just offer more than we wanted to.
Yeah, but if you're thinking of the other kind of wild card in terms of goaltending out there is Jake Allen. Jake Allen is going to be a free agent. I think a lot of teams are going to have a good look at him. I think he might be starting over Jacob Markstrom in that playoff series against Carolina. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens. He's played better than Markstrom.
Yep.
So,
and I mean, if we look at free agent goalies, I don't think the Flames need a really great backup. I think if you're putting your Mints and Wolf in your rebuilding team, Alex Lyon would be fine. I even think a guy like James Reimer you get away with for a year. I don't know if they look at a guy like Samsonov, but he's in the UFA. I could even see them spending the money to go out and get a 35-year-old Frederik Andersson as an experienced backup.
Yeah, there is some options out there. I also wonder what the plan is next year for how many games that Dustin Wolf is going to end up playing. I would suspect that they want him to play a little bit more.
And that's why, if you're Vladar, I don't know that I'd come back. I don't know if he's ready to say he's a number 2. I think it's sort of like Riddick, right? We played Riddick as a number 1. I think we all realized he wasn't. He went out and tried it, and he's made a career being a backup. But I think he needed that chance to explore that.
Here's my counter. Dustin Wolf has proved everybody wrong, so I'm going to precursor this in saying this. And it's very clear to me that I think that this guy is the number 1, is the goalie going forward. But I do sense that there will be a bit of a step back next year in terms of in terms of his stats. So I don't know if I don't know. I don't think that you can just toss no-name goalie as your backup is what I'm.
No, I mean, I wouldn't bring up Cooley at this point, but I think bringing in a veteran like a Reimer and let's be honest, if the team's going to take a step back, does it really matter who's in net?
No, but I don't I do think it does and it doesn't because
I've always liked the idea of having a veteran with a young guy.
I have too. Vladar is a veteran. Well, he's not veteran.
He's 27, but he hasn't played a lot of NHL games.
It's true. I mean, I think one of the I want to be careful. I'm not criticizing Dustin Wolf, but he wasn't as good on the road as he was at home.
I mean, if we look at Dan Vladar, he's played a total of 105 National Hockey League games.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
No, he's 27.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call him I would call him an NHL mainstay. I think he's been around the league for a while, but I wouldn't call him a seasoned veteran.
And Dustin's only played this is 50, this season is his first year. So I think it's not unreasonable to expect a little bit of a step back from him.
No, it's not.
And, probably if you're going a little younger on the blue line, which I think we agree is going to happen, it's going to be a little tougher for him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, that's why, like I said, I would probably spend the money if I was the Flames and go out and get a guy like Frederik Andersson, 35, a guy that's been around the league, a guy that's been a starter, that I think, or even a guy like Anton Forsberg, who I think you could rely on for 20 games a year.
Yeah, I mean, Wolf's played 71 games. It's not a lot yet. I'm not saying he's not a good goalie. Please don't get me wrong. I think that there's a lot to like about Dustin Wolf, but this is the NHL, and players take a step back.
We've seen goaltenders that have looked fantastic and then fizzled out.
Matt Murray.
I think there's a number of names. I mean, even if we look at just goalies, Steve Mason right? Won the Calder in 08, 09. I'd say fizzled out after that. Andrew Raycroft. Steve Mason, Tim Thomas. Like, there's a lot of guys that look good for a couple seasons. I'm not saying that's what Wolf's going to be, but I think assuming that, this guy's going to be the Flames starter 8 years from now, I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing. Like, it's the injury factor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Thatcher Demko. He's battling injuries. There's not a lot of goalies battle them. So that's the other, like, it's just the strenuousness of the position.
Yeah. And I think that, now the Vladar's here, and I think this is maybe what they're trying to do with Say and Sergeyev and all these guys they're bringing in. You got to find the next guy.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to start building that through junior, through AHL. Like, you've just, as my co-host Matt says, you got to draft a goalie every year. But I think we've got our guy. Now we've got to go find the next guy.
Yeah, I agree with Matt 100%. You should be drafting a goalie every year.
And we were doing that for a while. I mean, we had Mason McDonald didn't work out. We had Tyler Parsons didn't work out. Like, this is why you got to bring them in, because a lot of goalies don't work out.
Exactly. That's just because, you do need to draft them, because it's kind of the voodoo position of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else with the Flames that we need to...
I think if you want to talk about veterans, Kadri is the last name we should probably discuss.
Oh, I thought we discussed him. He's not going. I don't think he's going anywhere. I
think the only way he goes somewhere is if he has to go somewhere. But I think Kadri realizes he's had his cup. He's in the back half of his career. I think he stays a Flame. And I'm happy to pay him as a Flame.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I think a lot of you and I may not see and some fans may not see is I think Kadri's great for growing the game in other markets. Like, I think he's like when he got his Stanley Cup, he took it to his mosque, right? I think that Kadri is not your quote unquote typical NHL player because he's not a white male. And I think that's great for the game too. And I think the Flames like that multicultural aspect.
I believe that Zayne Parekh and Kevin Ball were the first defensive pairing in the National Hockey League of Indian descent.
Interesting.
I believe that was the stat that was tossed out there.
And the Flames have their Southeastern Asian night every year, which is kind of their celebration of India and surrounding countries. So I could see next year Parekh being a big face of that.
Yeah. No, I have really liked the last couple of years of what Kadri has been. And
do I think Kadri will be this next year? No. Do I think he still has value if he slows down? Yes.
Yes, he does. I guess the other veteran we should maybe ask about, I don't know if there's value in. I mean, Jonathan Huberdeau had a great year. Does it turn to a trade chip? I don't know.
No. If I was a GM, I'd say the guy stunk for a while since he got here. He had one good year. Show me you can do it again and let's talk.
Yeah.
It's a long contract to take on.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of teams would do that.
Do you think Rooney's back?
No. But I will say this. The complaints of Kevin Rooney ended when Adam Klapka joined the fourth line.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much of the blame was on Rooney or Walker Duehr.
Walker Duehr's not an option anymore.
No, but is Kevin Rooney that bad of a fourth line center? He did a pretty good. The Flames penalty killing after Four Nations was in the top part of the league.
think the fact you're a fourth line center on a rebuilding team says that there's something to be desired.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sam Morton will be a competitor for that, but I don't think Rooney's. I think
it ends up going to Kirkland, and I think you'll see a line of Kirkland, Klapka, and Lombo.
Yeah, I can see that. I think Kevin Rooney had a tough start, but I think his second half was much better.
I mean, remember when this guy came in, he started here. He didn't look good. We sent him to the AHL. Like, this is not the first time he hasn't looked great as a Flame.
Yeah. He was a fourth line. He was always meant to be a depth.
He was signed to be a fourth line center.
Yeah, exactly. And he did exactly what he was required to do. Thank you, nice man. Good luck in your future.
Yeah, I mean, you came, you saw, and we're going a different direction.
All right. In terms of anything else with the Flames? I'm going to toss just a quick curveball question at you because
Sure.
it looks like the PWHL will be expanding to Vancouver. There is an announcement coming on Wednesday that there is the indications are is that the PWHL is coming to Vancouver. They will be playing at Pacific Coliseum. Do you think Calgary gets a PWHL team?
I'm honestly surprised it's Vancouver over. Well, I am and I'm not. I think Calgary has more of a history with women's hockey. Like the Inferno here were great for a while. I'm surprised it's not Calgary, but at the same time, I ask, where do you put them? I don't think there's room for another team at the Dome. I think that they want to be able to sell more seats than you'd sell WinSport. Like, I think that's maybe the reason it's not Calgary's. I don't know where you put them.
I guess they wait until the new arena and sub arena is built.
But even the new sub arena is only 1,000 seats.
Yeah, that's probably
right. Like this, you and I have talked about this. Matt and I have talked about this. We have no secondary building here. We don't have a Pacific Coliseum. We've got Max Bell's your next biggest venue, and that's not what the PWHL wants for their arenas. Like I think Calgary is going to be stymied by this for a while.
Yeah. They had a big event here in Vancouver during February where there was they got 14,000 fans in.
Yeah.
So that really helped a lot in getting to Vancouver. And it looks like there is a team coming to Seattle. So there will be a natural.
That's what I was going to say. I think if you look at where the league is set up there, Toronto, Ottawa, New York, Montreal, Minnesota, Boston, to fly all the way from Minnesota, which is the furthest western team, to Vancouver and back doesn't make sense. I think it either has to be Vancouver, Calgary, Vancouver, Edmonton, or Vancouver, Seattle to make that kind of trip work.
Yeah, the reports I'm reading in Seattle, it sounds like they are getting a team as well. But
yeah, that, like I said, I'd love for it to be Calgary, but I don't see where it's feasible.
Yeah, I don't know the build. I mean, you live there, you know the building situation. They need to.
I think that the PWHL wants this to feel like the women's NHL, and they want them to be at least buildings that feel pro. And WinSport's not there.
No,
Max Bell's not there.
Yeah,
so I mean, Max Bell, it's a great AJHL building. And there's a lot of things you need, like even for the AHL. You don't just need a sheet of ice. You need all sorts of off-ice stuff that's required by the league. I don't know where you put the team. And I don't think that they want just hockey in the Dome. I mean, the other thing would be the Seven Chiefs Sportsplex. The Hitmen have played a little bit there. But again, I don't think it's what they're looking for the PWHL. I think it feels like a minor league arena.
And they do need, and then they also need some TV production.
Well, that's it. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff you need in an arena to make that happen besides just the ice. You need spots for cameras, and you need places to hang them. And I don't know where you put them.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I hope it happens. I hope Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver Vancouver getting a team. But
I think that league is going to look to move west. This is maybe another conversation for another day. I don't know if the Hitmen survive when the new rink comes in. I think the Hitmen right now are kind of there to fill the arena, but I think if you're able to fill it with more profitable games, I don't know the Hitmen stay in that new rink, and I don't know if they survive anywhere else. So we'll see.
Well, I wonder if they do what Vancouver ended up doing with the Giants and sent the Giants to Langley. I wonder if there's
Airdrie has no rink. Okotoks has no rink for them. You need another infrastructure project. I think that would be a great idea, but as of right now, the infrastructure is not there.
Yeah, I guess the other challenge that
yes, Red Deer, because Red Deer's got a team.
Can't be Red. No, but the other thing I was thinking here too, it's easier for Vancouver to go to Langley because the weather, while it gets wet, it's mostly drivable around here for the most part, unless of course it's a big snowstorm. It gets really cold in Calgary and -20. Do you really want to go to Calgary to Okotoks to watch a hockey game?
See, I think if you're going to do it, you'd put them in Airdrie, and I don't think people would go out there, but I think Airdrie is now big enough that I think it's got 80,000 people in Airdrie in 2022. I think you could create a new fan base there.
Maybe. Hopefully they get to the WHL final, but
yeah, we'll see. I mean, they're having a great year. It's been a long time since they men have done anything.
that is true as well, and I think that's an organization that does need a good. We talked about the Wranglers needing a run. The Hitmen probably need a good run as well.
See, and again, I've talked about this. If they move them, I don't know where you move them. I think most of the Western markets are already taken.
Well, the WHL is getting Penticton and Chilliwack next year. So
I think they're going back to Winnipeg too.
Yeah. Just before we wrap this up, I wish the WHL would split in two. I think that there should be a Prairie League and a BC, Washington, Oregon League. It just doesn't make sense to me to have all of the, like, I know you don't travel that often, but it just doesn't make sense to travel from Winnipeg to Portland.
You almost need a Pacific Coast League, which would be your BC, Portland, Washington. You could go all the way down to California if you wanted to. And then, like you said, a Prairie League. And you could even add in some, not they have now, but you could add in, some of the northern U.S. states if you wanted to, Montana and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep. That's a way to expand.
And, I wouldn't be surprised, Kevin, if we see a change to junior hockey with the new NCAA rules.
That's another conversation that I think is well worth having, because I think
you and I talked a lot last year about some of the changes to the BCHL. I think that's going to fall in their face in some cases, right? They're already starting to lose, a couple franchises, at least one. I think that we could see a big change to the face of junior hockey in this country in the next 5 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that league split.
And I think the other thing to add to that is, you talked a little bit about that Hockey Canada draft or Hockey Canada trial. There are going to be some changes in how Hockey Canada operates.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see some rebranding there, or even somebody new coming in as the face of that. But I think the biggest thing, and we can talk about this another time, but the biggest thing I think with the change to the NCAA rules, it's going to affect the USHL and the NAHL in the States the most. I could totally see those leagues getting swallowed up by Canadian leagues and the face of junior hockey changing because of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's leave it there. What are you guys going to talk about on Fireside Chat?
We will be recording a new Fireside Chat podcast this weekend. We'll be talking about a lot of the same things you and I talked about. The fact that Jonathan Huberdeau was named the Flames nominee for the King Clancy Award. The Flames being the highest scoring team to ever miss the playoffs in terms of points. We'll look at some of the RFAs and UFAs and who comes and who goes. And we have some fan mail this week from a longtime fan of ours who wants to know, is it time to move on from Huska? So that'll be one of our big discussion points this week. And then, because the end of the season, we'll be doing our wrap-up of all of our preseason predictions as well, which is a fun show.
Okay. I'll answer it. The answer to that question is N-O. How do you spell N-O? How quick can you spell it?
I'm not going to give my answer here, but I will give my 60s Batman answer. Do you want my answer to the Ryan Huska question? Tune in this week to Fireside Chat. Same podcast time, same podcast channel.
All right. We will be back tomorrow. Of course, I recorded with Jeremiah, the sports beer. We did our playoff preview yesterday, Talking Flames today. We are going to wrap up the Vancouver Canucks, which was just a much more complex conversation.
I'm going to ask you because I won't be there tomorrow. Besser, is he a Canuck next year?
No.
I don't think so either.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Rick Tocchet. We'll talk about EP40, EP25, MP3, all these Pedersen, the Vancouver Pedersen.
Bingo.
Yeah. Yeah, so much to talk, lots kind of to talk about going forward with Vancouver as well. So we'll chat about that tomorrow. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe or wherever you get your audio. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.